Why is Hebrew, or the original language of the Bible, so important in understanding context?
By and large, most English translations that you can pick up and use today are good translations. There is no perfect translation. There never will be a perfect translation. They do a good job. The one thing that unfortunately they do, and that you can overcome by learning a little bit of Greek and Hebrew, and even if it's at the level of Strong's numbers, is that English translation often obscures things that the writer is trying to do to you. So if you knew what the Hebrew words were in a passage, and you were able to make a little list of those, and if you had like software, I work for a Bible software company, you search for those, you're going to find other places where those, 3 or 4 of those same words are also clustered. That's not an accident. Okay, there's a reason why they're clustered here, and clustered here, and clustered here, and clustered here. Maybe, again, the intelligent writers, and maybe actually even God, okay, because he's behind all this, wants you to think of these things in succession, wants you to put those passages together. They form a thread that is a part of a greater tapestry. You can't really do that in English, because I hope this isn't news, but it may be. Not every Hebrew or Greek word is translated with the same English word, and vice versa. Not every English word represents the same Greek or Hebrew word. So if you can penetrate the English a little bit, you can use that to trace threads. You can also see patterns. Now, you put it on Psalm 51:10, which actually is a nice illustration. I didn't know you were going to do that. But it says, create in me a clean heart. Anybody know what the Hebrew word for create there is in Psalm 51? It's bara. It's the same word as in Genesis 1:1. Now, if you search for bara, it occurs a little over 50 times. Or, it's not that often. And you look them all up, and if you remembered, sorry to say this might give some of you chills, if you remembered your English class, your grammar, okay, back in high school, if you looked at all the occurrences of that, you would realize that what makes this verb different is that only God is the grammatical subject of this verb. Ever. In other words, the biblical writers never use this verb and put someone else as doing that action. It's only God who baras things. And so you take that back to Psalm 51. It's a unique verb. The writer wants you to know that only God is capable of this. You're not capable of it. It's not self-reformation. Only God is capable of this action.
How about that? Isn't that great?
So, I mean, it's a little tidbit that when you drill down a little bit and you do some searching, Bible study, I'll use the 4-letter word here, is work, okay? It's work. But if you invest a little time into it, it has a significant payoff. You will notice patterns. You will notice things that get repurposed. Yesterday in seminar, we did Psalm 82, and I happened to make the comment at the end of, the Psalm 82 is about God judging the gods of the nations who, they're put over the nations back at Deuteronomy 32, the Babel event. You get to the end of the psalm, and the psalmist says, arise, O God, and take back the nations, inherit the nations. The Hebrew Old Testament was translated into Greek in ancient times. Jesus and the apostles, most of the time when they reference the Old Testament, they're actually doing it in the ancient Greek translation known as the Septuagint. It's about 75% of the time. If you look at Psalm 82, in the Greek translation, the verb is anistemi, which is the significant verb of resurrection. There are 3 or 4 passages that will say something like, the Lord will arise and take back the nations. The Lord will arise and the Gentiles, will come. And that's really a hint. Okay? When you're using the vocabulary of resurrection, this is why Paul, in Paul's mind, it's easy for him to think about the resurrection in terms of the conquest of the principalities and powers. He does this in Ephesians 1 and Colossians 3 and Colossians 2. It's easy for him to put those two things together, connect the resurrection with the reclaiming of the nations, because he's thinking of Old Testament passages in the Greek translation. It makes it clearer. And since he's writing to Gentiles, it's wonderful because they can read Greek, but they can't read Hebrew. So you have all this stuff sort of floating around underneath the text that can be pretty significant, if you can ferret it out. And I know already what you're thinking. There's no way I can ever do this stuff. I am living proof that you can do this stuff. You say, well, you have a PhD. No kidding. No. I came to the Lord when I was 16, all right? I was a teenager. I didn't have a Christian home. I had no Christian background at all. I knew almost nothing about the Bible. I have a friend who was 9 years old who happened to have a crush on my wife when we were teenagers. But I won that one. But I met this kid when we were both 9, and his single mom, 4 kids, 2 of them had cystic fibrosis. They just struggled mightily. But I would get invited to their house, for family devotions and whatnot, and I would marvel at this kid. Like, he knew all these Bible characters. And I knew, I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. I had heard of Adam and Eve, I had heard of Jesus, and I had heard of Noah, and that was it. Anyone who's a scholar, their dirty little secret they have is they're actually the result of a little bit of time every day. It's not that they have super brain power, okay? It's about steadfastness and perseverance. You learn one new thing a day, at the end of a year, you got 365 new things. You got another year, you double that. It's exponential. So I'm the result of 5 minutes a day, a little bit at a time, but over a long period of time. You actually can do this. You live in a day and age where you have access to resources that you can learn to think like an Israelite. You can learn to think like a first century Jew. This is within your grasp. We're not talking about, hey, we live right after the printing press was invented. What's that thing, okay? We live in a day and age when we have instantaneous access to information. The tough part is knowing what things to pick out of the flow of information. And that's really what we try to do.